Okay. So Carrie and I are going to talk to you about accessible play. We presented this at KOTA, which is the Kansas OT Association, back in September. It was based off of a presentation we did on gross motor accessibility, and then we wanted to expand it into more play-based. Carrie and I got started talking about how we started small and very concrete about adapting toys, and then we were like, okay, but what happens when those kids advance out of that, but yet they're not maybe ready for using commercial toys? What do we do? And so looking at adapting play versus adapting toys. So modifying the occupation of play is our whole idea. Oh, yep. Oh yeah, we just have nothing to disclose. We don't get paid for this.
We didn't change our presentation. That has to be on the other thing.
Yeah.
So, I want to add one thing too. For me, this has been really, really impactful, and it's changed the way I practice. And I want you to think about, through your careers, has there been something or someone or a course that you've attended that really changed the way you looked at what you do? And this for us, or at least for me, has done that because I've looked at things in a different way. We all know that play is extraordinarily important. Kids learn from play. They learn from the activities that they're interested in, not always the activities that we're interested in. So that's one reason I think this is really, really important. So how can we help make play more accessible, especially for our our kids with different motor needs?
So here's our objectives. So we want to talk about the importance of inclusive play. You all know this. We have a different audience for our KOTA presentation. Identify the ways to meet child's needs through play, and understanding some different options to modify or adapt play to encourage that independent play. We can skip past this one. It's really interesting. When we did it at KOTA, most people were outpatient. And so we talked a lot about what's the equipment and toys that you use? And they've got that one, the DJ Bouncing Beats. And they've got all those nice, stools to position kids on. And the kid plays really well with the toy at the center. And then we talked to them about how do you tell, what do you tell parents at home? And they're like, oh. So we left that in there because we think it's important to think that we all look at play very differently from other settings. Next, if you'll click again.
So when we were putting this together, we looked into how much does it cost to raise a child with special needs? And based on the KSHCN, which is the Kansas special healthcare needs, it costs 4 times as much to raise a child with special healthcare needs. So if you think about those kids that they have multiple doctor's visits, they need equipment, maybe they need tube feedings, that formula costs. So all of that, it comes at a cost. But if you guys look at the prices of these toys that Fitz has bought for us, looking at the cost of that Bebop, how much was the Bebop? 120 maybe. Okay, seriously, that Bebop is what, maybe 20, maybe $30 at Walmart. And so looking at some of the toys and how can you adapt toys to make it so that it's not a financial burden for families, that gives them accessibility, because not every parent is going to buy a $120 Bebop for their kid, because how many of you guys have kids that the Bebop got boring after a month? Right? So. Is she gonna click on the woman? Okay, so don't do the video yet, but
yeah, you're doing great, Leslie.
We're just trying to figure out how to do it with you being our.
That's okay. We can just watch it.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at inclusion, that was the other thing we thought of, is that adapting isn't just about giving them a specialized toy, whether it's the $120 Bebop or doing something that we've adapted for ourselves. It's looking at how can you change the environment a little bit so that they're able to access play. The little boy on the left, Bethany, I think recognizes him. When I went to daycare, they were just pushing him around the little circle in daycare, and all the kids were doing water play. And I just suggested, is there a way that he can participate in the water play? And she goes, well, he can't get up there with his wheelchair. All he did was turn his wheelchair sideways and he was able to access it. They also hadn't considered the things that he might enjoy doing, which would be going down the slide. And just for reference, this kid doesn't have head control. He's pretty dystonic. His arms flail, his legs flail. So movement and controlling his body is very difficult.
And then this little gal, a lot of you probably recognize her. She was in the fall ball video. This was the first time they got to go to the park. And so she has an older brother with autism. And we were talking about like getting out into the community. And mom was like, well, we don't really take her anywhere. She goes to therapy and she comes home. Like that was it. And so I was like, they just moved and were in walking distance of this park. And I was like, well, they have a swing there that we could probably put her on. And so this was the first time that she got to go to the park and play. And mom sent me a few other videos of brother going to the side while the nurse is pushing her in the swing. And it was just really nice to think about like inclusion or adapting play doesn't have to mean like something really specialized or expensive. Like, yeah, we could probably position her a little bit better, but like that really doesn't matter in the long run.
And I just want to point out the guy in the middle, he really did love that. He smiled and laughed. So he looks terrified. He was not.
So we'll watch this video in just a second, but these are all the reasons kids need to play. You will all know this. This hits on like every single area that we look at development. But this is all research-based ways that children learn through play. This little guy has a diagnosis of HIE. He also has a diagnosis of CVI. And one of the activities we were working on was him to track vertically. He was starting to get hit in the face with balls at recess or at daycare and things. And then he would also kind of flutter his eyes when things were a little overstimulated. And so we started with working on slow activities like a scarf for a slow ball. And then I was like, do you remember that Ella Fun game or whatever? And mom was like, oh my gosh, yes. And so we got this game and mom actually started with by taking off the netting part and just putting a scarf on top of it so the scarf would just move. And then this was the first time they put all the butterflies in it. And if you can just watch.
There we go.
Oh, I don't know if we have sound too, but he.
We have to have that.
And look, there we go. That's exactly what we were looking for. So looking up vertically. And so it just really, it's like, where's there more? Like, let's do more. And so using play versus like, okay, just track this item up and down 20 times, like that's not fun for a kid. And so how do we get that during play? Oh, but you want to hit it one more time. So all you OTs have probably seen this and you're probably like, oh gosh, back to school. This is from the OT practice framework. And this goes into a really nice chart about how we went through our clinical thinking and processing about what toys to adapt and how to adapt them for a kid. So this goes through all the areas of occupation. Most of our kids were leaning into this play, some of the ADLs, social participation. They're not really working. Some of them go to daycare. We know rest and sleep is really important. And we know that sometimes we can change play before bedtime to make it a little bit more functional for families. Client factors, those are those beliefs, values, body function structures. So when we think about beliefs and values, like what does a family believe is play for their kid? Some cultures don't value play as much as we do here in America. Some cultures think that play should be a kid on their own, or older siblings should facilitate play with kids. Some families believe that it's that responsibility of the parent or caregiver. So really tapping into that.
I'm going to jump into some parents don't know how to play. Looking at what is keeping kids from being able to have access to play.
Then we also look at performance skills. So we're looking at their sensory processing, like that little guy we just saw, that might be way overstimulating for some of our other friends. Motor and praxis, so planning how their body moves. Emotional regulation. What is this DJ bouncing beats going to be too much for kids to regulate, or is that just enough? Then we look at habits and routines and rituals. So where is family going to have the most practice with these things? What are they going to get the most use out of? Like, we don't want to adapt a toy that's going to cost a ton of money and then, like Carrie said, get uninteresting in a couple weeks. Culture. So we just talked a little bit about that with values and beliefs, but when we look at those contextual and environmental factors, we look at time, like how much time is this going to take out of a family? Is there a whole lot of setup for them? Is this something accessible? Virtual play, you're going to see a little gal that Isabel works with. And one of the things we did to adapt play was work on tablet use. I mean, it's like the day and age. So like, how are we going to make that accessible? Because she saw her siblings use their tablet. Um, so this is a really nice tool if you're thinking about a kid you're working with and you're like, I don't even know where to start to adapt. These are some things that prompt some reflective questions that you can work with families to find out what play means to them, what they want to do with their child, especially for those kids who are very motor or very medical involved, because we all know that those are the families that are like, we want them to sit up. We want them to sit up. And you're like, we have worked on sitting up for ages. Like, how about we work on just play? And not play with something while they sit up and watch us.
Okay, so looking at the picture that you see here, anyone have any idea what that kit cost? That's like $2,200. Okay, do you see any toys there that we actually see in typically developing kids' homes? Okay, so looking at what can I do to help this child be successful, and how can we use things within their own home, and how can we adapt those to make it easier for them to use versus, we talked about 4 times as much for children who have special needs. Do they really need to have this $2,200 kit? They look great. Where'd you say you saw them the other day?
I saw the first one I've ever seen. It was this one right here, which I have no idea what it does, but I saw it in a house and I was like, oh my gosh, they have that. And on the back, the sticker said ATK. And I was like, oh, how long have you had this? And they're like, oh, we get to have it for 2 weeks. And I was like, okay. So I just think that like, we don't ever see these things. That was the first time I seen it. And now the kid gets to play with it for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So looking at adaptation, it's an alteration or adjustment in the structure or function of an item that results in a better fit. A better fit. That doesn't mean just because for your 8:30 that it fits, that it's going to fit for your 10 or your 11:30. So we're really looking at as individualized of what their interest level is, what their motoric needs are, what their cognitive needs are, what their language needs are. And with toys, it just talks about making adjustments or modifications that allows them to.
These are the different ways that we're going to look at adapting play. We got this from a PowerPoint that Isabel found on adapting, and we kind of edited it to find ways that we thought that we adapt play in early intervention. But it kind of gave us some different categories to look at. So we're going to look at confining, stabilizing or securing, extending or enlarging, enhancing or adding, or simplifying or reducing.
So I think if you're looking like, okay, this is a lot of information, that slide right there is the most important to look at, because those are the typical things that we're going to try to do. But which one is appropriate for that child?
So first, we're going to start with confining. This is Charlie. So confining is adapting the play space or the area around the toy. So if a toy moves out of reach, we know that many kids, that toy either it doesn't exist anymore, or it's frustrating and too hard for a child to get. So when we're thinking about play, we're not thinking about trying to get the kid to reach for things. We're not thinking about the child trying to go crawl. We're literally just saying, we're going to set up the area so it's accessible for you to play. And that's it, period. So this one is a little sensory tub, and this was actually at her daycare. They put her in there with some water and some little toys, but you can tell she's not sitting up completely on her own yet, and so it gives her that little corner to help support her, and then she has all these toys right here to be able to reach and play with. This little gal is in a laundry basket. And then we popped in her little switch and her accessible toy just to make it more functional. Her brother was actually like climbing in here. And I know a few of you have been in this home, and he was being kind of wild. And so he was like, put her in there. And so we put her in there. But it ended up being one of those things where then she was able to have that toy super close to her. She was able to have her hand accessible with the switch. So it actually gave her a lot of support to be able to play. Some other ways of confining are adding a hula hoop or area around a child. So like a ball rolls, it hits the edge of the hula hoop, comes back at the child. Pool noodles are really great. A box lid. So those boxes like that you get from like the office store, those are really nice for small children or for a tabletop activity. We've got right here a cookie sheet. And then this little guy, I mean, it doesn't have to be super complex. Like he's in a high chair on the floor with his brother, but now him and his brother can play together, and he's got those toys blocked in by that lip. Have you guys ever, what are some other ways that you guys have made confined play spaces?
Like fiber boxes, because they're also kind of narrow, so there's not so much. And on the floor.
Yeah, she said 2 couch cushions on the floor. They're kind of got a little aisle they're sitting in. Great idea.
I've used the corner of the couch. Not the couch, but like maybe the couch and a cushion or if it's like got a ottoman with it, making it a corner that way so they have support.
So that's confining. So your idea about confining is making the space smaller or more accessible.
Okay, so the next thing we're gonna talk about is stabilizing. How can we stabilize a toy? So that one, we've got it so it's not rolling away, that would be confining. But this is looking how we're attaching it so it makes it more accessible. In this case, this was a little kid of Trina's. And she really was struggling with reaching for toys because of her size, the length of her arms. And so what we did is we strapped toys down using rubber bands. I bought some bowls from At Home, and they are the best rubber bands that held the bowls together when I sold them. Because I bought rubber bands. Did I bring them? I bought a box of rubber bands and they work good, but I'm always afraid they're going to snap off and hit the kid. But just thinking about how can we stabilize? So this is an example of using rubber bands to do it. Oh, this is TheraBand?
Yeah.
Okay, so TheraBand would do it.
Oh, it's the next picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an example of a little guy. Okay, we've got the at-home rubber bands on there. We're using Diasim to hold things down, Diasim or shelf liner so things aren't sliding away. Because in this example, I'll go ahead and play the video. Because the hound dog was a little wild, so he kept like falling off the box. Now I want to point out this little guy is trisomy 18 and he was probably 18 months at this time. He's been in the hospital for at least like 8-9 months of his life. He this was the first time we introduced a switch in a toy. So, and that's become kind of a standard for him. We've expanded that with additional toys for him to access. And we're currently working on, it's not just about in this moment. It's like what we're looking at in the future, because we started trying to introduce 2 different switches so that he can make a choice. For language, what do we need to be able to do? Make choices. So wanting him to decide, does he want this dog to sing or does he want the hound dog to sing? What kind of arrangement do we need to make so it's accessible? Because he also has CVI, so he's not really seeing things on his left side. So everything has to be on his right side. In December, he got a car from Geeks for Kids, and in that car, it has motion sensors here and here, so that this spring, we're hoping that we can teach him to drive. So we're looking at being able to make choices and cause and effect, because his only cause and effect was if my sats dropped, my mom came. She took care of him all the other times. So, but that's Mr. Jude. So I think you see him later too.
And a couple other ways that we talked about stabilizing is like magnetic strips on cookie sheets. Toys with wider bases obviously work a little bit easier. Play-Doh or Theraputty. Yes.
Great question, because I've started seeing that same little tray table in a couple of different pictures. Where is it?
That table, okay, so that table is $39 at Amazon and it tilts. It works great with the tomato seat. It does not work great if you have the mobile base, because the mobile base raises you up so high, but it works with a go-to seat. That family actually, they bought one and we got them one because we wanted to have something. We were practicing 2 different switches. So but then we put him now in front of him. So that's been super helpful because, that brings that body forward so that they motorically can access toys. It puts it in a place they can see it.
That's something that we have in our library at this moment.
No, and I would say that we've had to adapt it a little bit too. Like I have a family who we had to put some books or some risers under it, or and even tie those down on the books so that if the child, he isn't at the place yet where he's going to be pulling it down on him, but if we have a little bit more motor movement, it is pretty light tray.
It sounds like
And so- Yeah, it is,
It's not as heavy duty as the tomato tray,
but it doesn't cost as much.
but it's a lot. Yeah. So here, go ahead, Katie, you did these, so.
So these are other ways. This is actually one of Isabel's kiddos too. These are a couple other ways to stabilize. We with suction cups, and so I can show you on this one. When we think about play, like the suction cup toys are all going to be infant toys. They are, you spin it, you touch it, you put it in your mouth. There's really not much to do with it. And so how can we get toys that are up higher or at the level we want a child to play at that are more age appropriate? So this is a one of those like car, it has the steering wheel and the levers and everything on it. And these suction cups you can buy off Amazon, and they just come with like the washer on the back. And so I just popped the back off of this toy. Actually, you can see my fail attempt first. I tried to super glue them on, that didn't work. So then I popped the back off, just drilled a little hole, and then they popped right in and I could put the back on. So it was like very simple and easy. This one, and they're very sticky. They stick obviously really well. This is like the little hedgehog, so it's the same way. So you could actually pop it and I could pass it around so you could see. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds to put together, and you can do it to any toy you can take the back off of, that way to make more accessible for the child.
Or you can see Miracle and bring them.
Those, yeah, those are, yeah, or like this one I bought to do this for like a presentation a while ago, and I left it with him. Yeah, he's got that now. But Isabel was saying, she had told me, and she could talk about him, but she was like, we can't get him to stand for very long because like the suction cup toys are the toys that he, I should have brought that over here. The toys that he does play with on there, like they lose interest pretty fast. And so, if we're working on those motor positions, now he has something he can actually do. And I think that's a video. No, that's okay. I couldn't remember. So just add, instead of thinking like, what's the adapted toy out there, and like, okay, I'm gonna buy this toy to give to this kid. Like, what does the kid like to do? What might be age appropriate, more age appropriate, or developmentally appropriate? And then how could I adapt that toy? It's just kind of like shifting that mindset.
Okay, so the next thing we're gonna talk about is extending or enlarging. And these are just two examples of really, really simple things that you can do to make it more accessible. The video on the left, go ahead and play that one. This was just, I mean, we've all seen this puzzle, but this was duct tape. And how much easier it made. Now, we didn't address like trying to do each of the little gadgets, but it was just more about, oh, playing peekaboo and lifting those up. The one on the right, I did, I think 4 different ways that you could adapt a puzzle like that, because those little teeny pegs were too small for the child to be able to use to pick up. So I have a handle, I have a ping pong ball. Go ahead and play it and it'll spin over.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, actually I Gorilla Glued it. And I'll be honest, the tape, it stayed in my car for a while. Heat, cold, isn't great for it, because then I would find all the tape had fallen off. And I will be honest, trying to carry the puzzle around, the pieces do fall off, but they worked really, really well until they'd sat in my car for a while. So thinking about other ways that we're gonna extend, looking at, and you have the video, it's the next one's the video of building things up. So like, think about that model magic stuff that can build up a handle of silverware. That can build up the handle of a stylus. That can build up the handle of anything like a drumstick. I have a kid that we put that he could hold the drumstick like this, but he had a really hard time banging it. So we put the knob that was like this, the T knob, and then he was able to grab it and he was able to play his drum that way. So it's just kind of thinking outside of the box on what is going to be best for that child.
What was the little plastic one?
The ball,
There's a
ping pong ball.
Go back. Was that a?
It's a ping pong ball. So I just poked a hole in it and shoved it down, and that one I think still on because it didn't need any glue. So I was just trying to think of different things, because when we look at kids, when they're hand used, a lot of times they may be fisted. So what can we do to get them to open and hold? This is if we look at the development of hand, this is going to be easier. This. So the puzzle as it stands is trying to do a 2-point grasp to pick it up. So we were trying to come up with other ways that they could grasp things.
So this is the video that I was chatting about earlier with the stylist. So this is a little one that Isabel sees, and we were talking about how parents were kind of stuck in that, like we wanted to do these motor skills, and she was really good at using a button to activate a toy, but like where do we go from there? And so we had started talking about like her grasp and her tone, and she has that little tray right there. And so Isabel got her a little stylus, and with her grasp and retaining it, she was able to then move around on the tablet. Whereas if she was just using her hand, she would have been either, it wouldn't have picked up her hand, or it would have done that thing where it like zooms out on the screen. We would have had some more issues with it. So thinking about moving along as she progresses, like this is play right now, but like, can it be communication later? Maybe. Isabel, is there anything you want to add to this?
I think that's something, I talked about it shifting my thinking. It's play makes everything else more accessible. And so if we're not paying attention and helping our children to be able to play, how is that going to impact their ability to communicate? The little guy that I showed you with the switch and the ain't nothing but a hound dog, we're actually looking at AAC eval now, a formal AAC eval to see what he can do to communicate. But we're starting to prep. He just got a Big Mac yesterday. So looking at the switch is entertaining for him and he loves it, but it's looking at where are we going to build? We don't just stop. We keep building with those steps.
And we did some pretend play, which was really sweet. And she picked it up like so fast. Like we were like, what do her siblings do? She's a twin. Mm-hmm. And so, parents were like, well, they play with the kitchen or they play with baby dolls or like they do a lot of this pretend play right now. But her play was like almost like separated. Like she was expected to use this switch and play with this toy that activates and she watches it, or put in and take out, put in, take out. Well, that loses interest. And so when we were over at her house, we were like, she had a baby doll on the ground and Isabel picked up a bottle and I picked up a brush and we just modeled it. And I mean, she picked it up like that. So just because she has motor limitations does not mean she can't do pretend play or like those next step play activities. We just had to adapt how she was holding it or, how it was presented to her. The next page.
Yeah. So this little guy here on the left, I saw another family who says his favorite thing was the rain stick. And I said, well, how are you guys playing with the rain stick? She goes, well, I just have to stand here and hold it. And this is what she would do. So is it passive or is it dynamic play? It's pretty passive. Why can't he reach out and control that rain stick? And so I was really on the search to be able to find something that made it more independent. And so that's where I kind of came up with this. Don't judge because it didn't work great. It's still a work in progress. So this child, really the only things he ever played with, he sat in his tomato seat and his mom gave him sensory exploration things like stretchy tubes and furry things. That was the extent of this child's play. Cognitively, he was pretty intact. Everything, he looked really good, but mom didn't think that because he couldn't move his body, then he couldn't do things. So trying to dispel that. The next video is the same child. And so adapted, we all know the spin toy, right? I had an idea of how I wanted him to use it. It didn't go the way that I thought it would. So I modified as I went through, but I adapted the spinning things with a piece of PVC and Gorilla Glue. Uh-oh. I'm gonna try it again. Ready? Oh, yeah, it's easy. You do it again. Up here. So clearly I adapted the toy, but we also modified how he played with it. He wasn't able to have it stabilized with the base. I had to hold it because it did need some movement. In addition, I used a red Solo cup to adapt it because I was looking, that hole's this big. I was looking at how big I can make that hole because he would move like this. And my hope was that he was going to be able to get it over and then he could let it go and it would drop. And so when we were practicing it, I think he could probably do it at one point, but at this stage, it was more just about holding him, letting him knock it over so that he could understand the concept of it. He had never seen this toy. They didn't have this toy, and he was pretty excited about it. I left it with him and he still has it, so. Okay,
So extending or enlarging books. So we've talked a little bit about play, and we want to kind of touch on books a little bit too. With extending or enlarging, there's so many different ways you can do this with books. That's adding page separators, so like pom-poms or foam, or this one on the end has some popsicle sticks in there, depending on the child's grasp. Cutting up a sponge is really inexpensive. Way to add those spacers. We can also add some different tactile features to a book to extend out. There was one little gal, her parents found these like little, they were almost like thick, what do you call those? They're fuzzy and they've got the metal in them. Stainer's, thank you. They were like really thick ones, and so they doubled that up and they use those as extenders. So lots of different ways that don't cost barely anything. This video right here
so with the pom-poms.
is with the pom-poms, and this is the first time he's using this book too. That was one of the main things that Carrie and I wanted to do, is like, can we get videos of the first time so that this is something that's new, something that's not learned, to really get an idea of, did this intervention help even right away.
So thinking of what I could have done, I could have used my fancy dancy home rubber bands to stabilize this book, so I would have less involvement. But it was the first time.
The middle one is those dog training buttons. They're much cheaper than the Big Macs. They do run out of batteries after a while, and obviously they're smaller. But if we think about extending or enlarging for book reading, we think about like those little buttons that are on the sides of books that kids love. Well, they can only access them if they're able to isolate a finger, whether it be thumb or their pointer finger. So by having these, we can record over the cow sound, we can record over the dinosaur sound, and it's just expanding that space so the child's able to access it a little bit more.
What's that? Instagram AAC
Oh, AAC for all
or something. She recommended these, so I've used these for a couple kids. They may be out of date. So looking at the motoric use and looking at communication, we plugged these, or we Velcroed them to different places in the child's home, and he would crawl up to him. He would tap it to let his mom know what he wanted. One of them was on the table, I want to draw. And he was then able to be helped up to sit in the seat and join his peers and play. So these are super, super helpful, and they're more expensive. They're less expensive than a Big Mac. They're like 6 for $69. So,
and those are 4 for 13. Now
Yeah.
these are going to be, you
These
can
are
add
pretty-
the picture. So I mean, there's some different, depending on how long the child's going to use it, what it's used for, things like that. I'll leave this up here because you guys know what these look like, but this came out of like my daughter's craft kit. I mean, so it didn't even cost anything, and they're just little foam pieces that then made the flaps more accessible.
we didn't really talk about it, or we don't have any pictures of it, but using these in the books, being able to use that as part of literacy too. AAC for all, isn't that what, like, they have a lot of things that they use. They're school-based, but just because they're school-based doesn't mean that we can't apply some of the stuff.
So the next section that we're going to look at is enhancing with light. So enhancing means to add a feature. So to add color, texture, something to highlight or to bring awareness to a toy. We know some kids will really like this. Some kids obviously will really not like this. One of the easiest ways, and one of the ways that I know that a lot of you already do, is by using light. So we think about different ways to illuminate a toy. So this is an example of this little girl using this hedgehog toy, and inside is a puck light. And these puck lights are about 2 for $10. The nice thing about them, they're just from Target, is that you can hit it again and it will cycle through colors. So you can find a color preference and hit it again and it stays on that color. So if you have a child who has specific color preferences or just needs like constant change, like the white light isn't going to be super interesting. This is a nice one, but they are a little more pricey. Obviously, a parent's phone. Works really well for a lot of toys if it can fit in there. And then these are those little candles. They do illuminate, but they're not as bright because it's got that yellow tone to them. But adding that in just brought a little bit more excitement to the toy. This little gal does have a diagnosis of CDI. She also has hip dysplasia. And so we were working on pull to stand with this. And we did it mostly just to make it more exciting and interesting, honestly, because she was just kind of over it. She's like, I know what you guys want me to do. This is enhancing by adding tactile features. So these are some ways to do brown bear. These are those little gems just glued on there. Now, Carrie and I have talked a lot about like when we add little things, we want parents to do it because we don't want the liability of it. So it's teaching the family how to do it. Also, just like this may be a choking hazard. So educating families on this is something we use with a parent, things like that. A lot of the things with adapting books or adding little things in there, they are all tiny. So that is one caveat that we say is doing this with the family and then also just educating on like these are things that can come off. But those are the little gems. This the tail has some yarn. We have a book up here that has a couple different things. Like this is the tail on the bunny is a pom-pom. This is like puff paint that's also got glitter in it. So here's like a googly eye, it's a little feather. So taking a book this was donated by Fitz. Taking a book that the family gets from like the doctor's office that's for free or something like that, and then just adding a couple different things to it can bring highlight or awareness to those pages for kids either with motor limitations, vision limitations, or just who need a little bit more input sensory wise.
From that coaching perspective, having the parents do it or doing it with them, asking them what they think might stand out, that's really empowering them to do it, because I found that when I adapt a toy and bring it out, they'll play with it, they love it, but they don't have the skills to do it when I leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, how can you help? We've got lots of toys that we can practice and trial to see what works, because sometimes things don't work, sometimes they do. But, when I did the pom-poms for the book, I had the mom help do it. I brought the stuff because she didn't have it, but she did it so that she has an understanding of how to do it. So if she wanted to do it again, she could.
A couple other ways that we didn't use them in these books would be using like the furniture pads, those little furniture pads, using a little piece of like sandpaper, dot or glue dots, are also a really easy way to add some tactile features. So there's a lot you can do to enhance books. This is enhancing with color. So we've all seen this toy. This is the Crayola. I don't even know what it's called, but it's like about $25 depending on where you get it from. It's a really nice illuminated toy and it has that jelly pad on the top too. After a while though, it doesn't become super interesting. So like what are some other ways families can do that? Adding color to hair gel in a bag and then using that light feature and putting that behind it. They're going to have a lot more, or putting up against a window. They're going to have a lot more ability to change and edit it than they would with this toy. This is one I got offline, but a mom actually sent me the idea of it. This is we were working on food play for this little one, and she took Cheerios and used them in her food grinder, and then she added food coloring to it. So she made that was such an inexpensive way to do kind of like a sensory play activity with food. This is the Diddy Bird books. They have like a teeny tiny little spot on each page that's this silver color for you to be able to push and make a song. They're super great for working on isolating a finger, and kids really like the books. But if we think about motor limitations or vision limitations, I had some of those pages, I was like, where is the button? Like, it took me a while to find it. So I have a mom who had gotten one of these, and I was like, we were sitting at a visit, I think Molly was there, and I was like, what about those little page protectors that are multicolored? So there's Carrie has them right here, but they come in all different colors and they fit like perfectly around there. So just a really inexpensive way. Mom picked her colors and put them around so that they'd have a little bit more of that enhancing with color. We think about background. So you all know this, but just a reminder, I know, Mom's like, this
All thing, I'm like.
we get always on the floor with these kids. We're sitting on the floor and we think about like this carpet even. Like this is my rug at home. It's very busy. And you put the toys on there and we can see them. I mean, they're there, but like how much easier it is for a child to access and see. One thing I noticed was like the depth. Like I can't see that there's a depth between this puzzle piece and the carpet, but when it's on that black foam, this is actually a foam piece that was 25 cents from Marshall's, so it doesn't slide around. And now you can see that there's actually a little bit of depth to that puzzle piece too, which was nice. So the child knows they can grab it.
And I want to say, we've got lots of kids with cortical visual impairment, vision impairment, whatever. They may be having some differences in their vision. But even if a kid has typical development in their vision and doesn't have CVI, these strategies can be helpful. Think about, I know the little girl was interested in the hedgehog because it was placed up. It had the light. Yes, that may have been because she was CVI, but just thinking when we're changing up some of their regular toys, it's like a brand new toy. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is simplifying. So looking at the puzzle on the left, look how busy that is. Okay, again, this can go back to CVI, but it can also go back to the motor piece. Awfully busy. So I know Katie painted this puzzle for this little girl. Why don't you tell a little bit about?
Yeah, so actually this child has no visual impairment. She actually has a diagnosis of autism. And it's quick. She's all over the place. And so mom had been working on animal sounds and was like modeling, showing them the books, but she would look at like one page and then quickly move off. So I was like, I wonder if she's just like, what if we like reduce the stimulation? Like, what if we just make things a little bit simpler for her? The house has a lot going on. So what if we kind of draw on her attention by making it easier? And so this is just the background is painted on there. And this is the first time she used it. Oh yeah, you heard me say quack like 5 million. We can turn the sound down. But she actually, by the next time we came back there, Molly and I came back, she was able to do the whole puzzle on her own. And so mom was like, and then they started saying the animal sounds. And so just kind of thinking like, it doesn't have to be a certain diagnosis we do these things for, but like looking at that sensory system, like, is it we need to enhance or is it we need to simplify, or both in 2 different times of the day or 2 different settings? Yeah.
When it comes to adapting, like painting, you talked about drilling, do you typically take those home with you and work on it, or do you do that too?
With them, some of these we did ahead of time because we were working on a presentation for this. And so we were like, okay, well, we need to do these because we all know that sometimes we're like, this is a great, like, let's do this. And then you go back and the family's like, oh, I forgot to buy that. And then again, so a few of these, but we did on our own. The mom actually, with this one, mom actually did this with another puzzle on her own afterwards. Okay. So she really saw like the buy-in of it once it worked.
And I think even just introducing some of this stuff, even if it's something that we did on our own, that they get that buy-in. Jude, who we were working on the Switch with the Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog. Mom, when I came in to see them, it was about 2 years ago. Really all she was worried about was keeping him alive. When we talked about goals, she had a really hard time putting goals because he was not supposed to live at all. And so a year later, when I did the annual, she's starting to think, okay, so like play, you guys have started showing me. She's used the words that Molly and I have dragged her to the things that she doesn't know and how she's thankful. Now that sounds like I'm a really bad coach because we're not supposed to drag people, but she goes, things that I don't know. And being able to show her and introducing them slowly, because just explaining to her, she's so out of her depth. She's an engineer and a chemical engineer at that. So all of these things that we've tried doing, she doesn't understand, but now she's starting to come up with ideas on her own. Okay, so what I did is I moved it to here. What do you think about that? And so that's how we've been expanding on that play.
Okay, so here's some table work. So you can turn to your partners and think about some things. Look at these 3 shape sorters. So if you're talking to a family and they're like, what would be a good age appropriate toy for my kid? And you're like, a shape sorter, for instance. Like, look at all the different options that they can find. And I'm sure there's a million more too. These are just 3 we found. So take a couple seconds, chat with your table and think about ways you could adapt. You could pick one of them, you could do all three of them, but ways you could adapt it to make it either more accessible for vision, motor. If it's too overstimulating, not stimulating enough, what would you maybe do? And then we'll come back and we'll kind of share.
Yeah.
Those are like cable somebody. Yeah. That's it. So I didn't want to agree. No, so he came with that. So they can't show it would be pretty jump. It's good. Thank you. I keep. Like, I didn't fun. I can't read it. I keep it full. Yeah, no, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, I got it. You find things. But I think I have. So I'm good. I like you to take it to me. Yeah. And you're. Right. I know. So we'll be good. Yeah, this is. Okay. Thoughts? Any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, there are a lot of.
Uh-oh. Did my computer die?
I think so.
I kept the cord.
Okay, Katie, you talk to him while I plug in.
Ideas. So, the first shape sorter on this side is the wooden block. Did anybody discuss the wooden block with their group?
So we
Had the
talked
red lid.
about maybe putting a light inside, or using some kind of like puppy paint around the edges, so it's easier to discriminate, and then maybe only focusing on one side at a time.
Great. So you kind of use simplifying strategies, enhancing with light, enhancing with tactile feature, so kind of 3 combos. Anybody else with the wooden one? What about the middle one? The one that's got the yellow lid, it's plastic, red bottom, plastic shapes.
I'm talking about taking the lid off and putting it on a tray and securing that with the bands.
Yeah.
Then they can just put in, it wouldn't have to be in the whole thing.
That's great. Yeah. Makes it more kind of like a puzzle too, lower, it's a little less flexion of the wrist.
Like covering up some of the options and reducing it to like this 100 slots.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Great idea. So you had securing it, and then Megan's group had what did you say? Sorry, were you reducing?
Yeah, simplifying.
Simplifying. Okay. And then the last one is the, I don't know what you call that one, the band one. I don't know a kid, I'm gonna be honest, I feel like every child that has this toy gets frustrated with it and hates it. Even typically developing kids, like I don't know a child who likes this one, so.
Stressful.
I think I see it more as a rattle.
Yeah.
Or like throwing it,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I like the idea of cutting it because I don't know anybody who actually likes it, so.
Okay, so we want to include a little bit about little rooms. I know Molly has brought out little rooms for kids, and you see an example of that one on the right. The idea of the little room is it takes away all the extraneous noise. And I don't necessarily mean auditory, but that visual noise, and gives them opportunities to find a toy because we want it to be in the same place that they're able to activate it. The one on the left, so this is a little girl who I started seeing right before COVID started, and then came back. She was one of the first kids I went to see, and we started Yeah, they're just pictures. So we
Okay.
started her in a little room, but we didn't have access to an actual formal little room. So we put her in a pack and play, and we strung the toys over top, and we had toys because we were really trying to get her to turn to one side, had the toys on that side. So this mom is super inventive. And so she then moved from her play or her pack and play to the corner of her bedroom. And this is what she did. She sent me this after she turned 3, because she's 5 now. And she had this set up on rails. So I wouldn't really consider this a little room, but what she did was make this play accessible to her daughter, and she could change things out. Her child liked to reach for things. She liked moving things. She liked crinkly things. And so this was super helpful for her. She had the buttons set there. So this is something she made, but I thought it was pretty inventive. And I also just wanted it to be, it doesn't have to be, sorry, Molly, the little room that we have on the right, because there's really not that many out there. But what can you do to reduce the stimulus in that child's home so they have better access to play? Clearly, we didn't reduce the stimulus on the left, but that was 4 years of working on play with her.
And then the other one is one that, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. That is one of the little rooms that was made, by the KSSB. Yeah. So we trialed it with this family. But we adapted it even more by putting the blanket on the top so that we're only illuminating or highlighting the area that we want her to turn towards. We also placed all the toys on a certain side so she could interact with it. Then brother climbed in there with her and started reading a story. So, actually he probably used him more than her for like a little calm down corner. But this is, another way to make one, that's not the $1,200 option.
I'm gonna go back to Jude. We introduced a black trifold. Oh, right before Thanksgiving, probably. His play took off, his reaching for toys, his visually looking at toys, even though they kept the lights low and there wasn't a whole lot of busyness in their living room. Just having that blackboard with the rings hanging down, he was able to spend time looking, and we've seen so much more improvement in his eye contact now, his wanting to communicate with eye contact. He smiles when he sees people and he maintains that eye contact. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so this is about switches. So there's lots and lots of commercial switches. There's some that are bigger, some that are smaller, some that are angles. I've been using this one. This is a big red switch, which is kind of like the Big Mac. This is $75. Okay, they're super sturdy, super great. Probably to start all of this, Katie found out about 3D printing, and one of our ATT meetings was at the library. The Central Resource Library will print for free because we're special ed. They just need to have what it is that we want printed. We don't even have to be there. So Katie's really been instrumental in making these switches, and there's all kinds. These are just some of the ones that she's been doing.
So on here, and there's a link that's, a hyperlink you can click on if you wanted to. I started with this option. So this was, when we did the adapting toys, with the plush toys a couple years ago. She had recommended Thingsverse, which is a website where you can get 3D printed templates for free. So I started with this one. I will tell you, it's a pain to put together, and so I was like, there's got to be a better option. So what it did is it 3D printed the switch top. There's 2 inserts and then the back panel, and I'll pass it around and you'll see it, like you have to screw it on and it's just a mess. And so I was like, this doesn't really work long term for a child, like maybe to test before the family purchases a switch, but it's got to take a parent who's pretty dedicated to like put this together. And this is just an audio jack that goes with it. So that was my first attempt off of Thingsverse. The plus about it is there's tons and tons of different patterns for tactile features, or you can change the color of the top. So that is a plus of that one, but not super accessible. This website is called Switched. It is my favorite one to go to. They actually have an amazing website with lots and lots of resources. Under Resource Hub, they have this, one of these options is a 3D printed switch you can go to, and it gives you the template. So you put it on a jump drive, you take it in the library and you say, I want this printed, help me. And they'll help you until you can learn how to use a 3D printer. What it does is it prints one base, which is really wonderful not to have multiple pieces and you don't have to screw anything. And then it prints a top. So this is actually, my brother has a 3D printer, so I went to his house. We actually tried one where we printed it in silicone instead of like plastic. And so we've got that also, like an added different feature to it. You can do the same where you can print like contrasting colors. The insert for it is actually like a regular keyboard, the button that goes underneath the letters. So I bought these off Amazon. So this switch right here, all the parts and everything, once it's printed, probably costs like $2. This one probably costs $1 once you're done. So these
75.
and we'll show you, there's some that are put together, but I wanted to leave these ones undone. This one, to put it on, you just snap the top on once the buttons, I left it out so you guys could kind of peek in. You do have to solder. So you have to solder the button to the cord, but they also have a solder gun at the library. You just have to bring your own solder, which is like super, super cheap. I would say that solder comes, one thing I learned, comes lead based and not lead based. So with little ones, we don't want the lead. So that was one thing that I did learn with all of this. But Thingsverse is a website. Switched is a great website. And then on Amazon, there are some that you can buy that people have, Amazon or Etsy, that families have made. So I'll pass these around.
And we have at the end of the PowerPoint or all the links too. So the PowerPoint will be if it's not already. Yeah, just go back to the, not that though.
Done.
There we go. Okay. So the next one, I don't know, how many of you guys came to our, I don't even know what the meeting was where we adapted the plush toys? Does anyone remember? Okay, Megan was there, Trina, Isabel. Oh, why am I playing it? You play it. So this was taken, it was at the old office and we adapted these toys as a group. And those were all just regular toys and you can see the different variety of switches. I believe all of those are commercial switches.
There, the
Or
three,
two of them are.
there's three, the only commercial one is the angled one.
Okay.
The other three are 3D printed. So you can do like a toggle switch, even 3D printed, and put it on top.
So this is one of the toys, we can hook it to the switch, but this is one of the ones that I adapted. Savers, I'm just gonna do a shout out. They have the best toys, but what you're looking for in toys like that are the ones with a single button. So the ones that have in their hands or feet. Violet, the dog, you can do that, but they have multiple buttons, so they're gonna have multiple cords coming out. Yeah. This is one of Jude's other favorite toys, so he makes choices between this toy and Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, so. In our PowerPoint, we have how you can adapt these, but we do not have time today to go through and adapt these. If that's something that people want to do, we can always see about scheduling another Lunch and Learn to be able to do that. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it, but these are just the quick things. You need to have the audio cord, you need to have these posy tabs. If you look at the internet, a lot of them are gonna say you need to solder. The great thing about this is you're not damaging the toy, you don't need to solder, because sometimes when you solder, you sever the wires, then you can't use the actual button that's on their foot. And so their siblings can't use it without the switch. The way by using these, you're able to use the button on their foot as well as to access it with a switch. So sometimes that might be a better sell to the parents that we're not going to ruin their toy.
And do we have the circuits in
we have
the
these.
equipment room?
Yeah, all
Sure.
of this is in the equipment. There's little sewing kits that you can take, so that you can sew up the toy and after you're done. There's the wires. We bought the two, in our equipment closet, we bought the 2-pack, like it'll come with two and it'll come with another end. There. So it's like this, so you get 2 toys out of one. And then those are the posy taps, and those are in there too. They're just little little
So-
pieces.
I'm just kind of wondering if we need to purchase some solders or whatever.
I would hope.
I mean, if you're gonna do that, do electrical, like, I just bought an electrical thing that tells me what the electricity is going through it.
Yeah.
See, like, you can get really deep dive, think about the bubble popper, the ball popper. So Katie has adapted one of those, but it's funny because it will only use the homemade switch. It won't use
I don't know why.
$5 switch. I went to do a similar toy and I think I burn up the circuit board. So like, I'm not saying do not jump into soldering, but that's why Savers is great because at least you can practice. And if you ruin a toy, it's $3, $4, $5. Because I have a bag of things that I've ruined. So just wanted to,
And we don't have to play these. We could just kind of.
yeah, but these, so if you guys want to reference, if it's something you wanted to do, these are the videos that actually show you how to do it. It's super simple,
No solder.
no solder. We actually went to present at KCK, their early intervention, and they had bought like 3 or 4 toys and how trying to get those to work was.
Yeah, it does take a little bit, like, I mean, it would
You can
take
keep going.
it takes some practice to be like, okay, like sometimes they didn't push it all the way through, or like, you kind of learn things, so just keep trying if it doesn't work, because it will.
But this technique is really best used for like a single function.
A single
Right.
function toy.
That really is what it should be used for.
Single function toy has to have a button separate from the battery pack or like the battery pack itself. So the button either has to be in a paw, like the dog thing where it has the ears and the paws. You could make 6 options with that toy. So you could have more than one switch with the same toy if a child really likes that toy. But it has to have, it can't be one where you push the body and that's where the battery pack is.
What's interesting, the switch that's going around that has like the keyboard button, that's actually what's inside these toys. That's what the button is a lot of the times. So found that out when I've torn them up. So, okay, go ahead and skip through these because we're not going to do that. Okay, so this is adapting using solder tool. So we've got the links if that's something that you want to explore on how to do it.
So this is the ball popper with the shoe next to it that I adapted. And Swish Adapted Toys has tons and tons of videos on their website of toys that are DIY videos on how to adapt toys, and they're phenomenal. You can like message him and be like, hey, this is like a new toy that I'm seeing a lot. Can you adapt it and do a video? And he'll do it. Or he has office hours once a week where you can zoom in and ask questions. So parents can, like, for free. And if you get stuck on a toy or something like that, or if a family has a specific toy they want help with and they're trying, like, they can zoom into him and he'll do it. It's an amazing website. And then Fair Play is a website where you can buy adapted toys at lower cost. So if families aren't really into the whole making their own, they can get some there. Replay for toy or for kids, same thing. The Laser Guy has some videos on adapting. They're not as exciting, but there's some there. And See Me Thrive also is a store. Oh, sorry, See Me Thrive is a store. Fair Play is a website that will send adapted toys to organizations who work with kids with different abilities. And they actually sent us like 5 of those adapted toys in the closet. I just filled out an application and they sent us those. They won't do them individually to families. It has to be like an organization. So we left this on so that we could share it with the other ITS programs.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is battery interrupters. Who knows what battery interrupters are? Who's used them? So the idea behind them, you can purchase them. It's a little round copper disc that would go in and breaks the circuit when you put a battery in. It has to be a battery operated toy. And so you're putting it on the positive side, and to make the connection, it's using the switch. They're $25. They're not super cheap. They're super breakable. I can't tell you how many of those I've broken. They're great, but they also don't always fit in the toy. They come in 2 different sizes. So if you've got a really, really narrow little seat for the batteries, they don't work super great. So go ahead and play the video, and then we're going to talk about.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of things we could it's taking a lot of people to do this. We're testing out our battery interrupters with this just to see if they would work. But it is a nice way. So the plush toys, like Megan pointed out, those are single operating toys that you would adapt. Soldering a toy, you're breaking the circuit, so it can only be used with a button. So if you're soldering an adapted toy, like the family can't access it by the traditional way to use it. And so, purchasing things through Savers or secondhand where they can kind of figure out what the kid likes is a nice way of doing that. The battery interrupter also is a nice way to try that out because they can try out a toy with a battery interrupter, see if the kid likes it before breaking that circuit and soldering it. And then if the child does like it, then they can just fully solder it. So it's easier because these aren't long term. Like these we want you guys just to use, like they would be used to test out a toy. And so we're gonna do a little pause where you guys get to make these with a group. And we'll walk you through how to make them. And then we've got some toys up here we can test them on so we can make sure it works. But there's a couple different things you're gonna use. You're gonna use all of these things all of these toys are way to adapt are gonna use the audio jacks. Like that's what you're gonna use. So, for a switch, you use this end of an audio jack. I don't know if you guys can see that. You use the pronged end. And then I don't think that's like that's what you're supposed to say anymore.
That's
The pronged end. And then the other one you use the other egg.
Call them, but do you want the male end or do you want the female connector?
It's really not easy. So we're gonna use this in the colorful end. Is what we're gonna use today. So you're gonna use that, and then you're gonna use cardboard. The thinner the cardboard, the easier it is because it slides in between the battery. And so this is just like a box of granola bars or something.
They're the best fig and olive crisp from Trader Joe's
So there you go.
with their onion dip. Yeah.
And then you're gonna use what's called slug tape. It's copper taping. I guess I don't know really what that's for. I don't know if it's typing. I really don't know. It's $10 for this whole roll and it's gonna literally last you forever and ever and ever. And we have all of these in the office too. So if you wanna break in groups, how many of these do we
I have
have?
10 ends.
What is on the thing?
So,
Maybe, I don't know, groups of like 5. Yeah, groups of 5. We're gonna pass all this out and then we'll go through how to make it.
okay. 2 more over here. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna
maybe
use cardboard.
I'm gonna use scissors. Let's put on the paper.
I forgot scissors, Karen.
Yeah, I forgot scissors. Oh, that's okay. I have like 4. We're gonna have to share scissors. I tried to find all of the ones that I could. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these. I'm gonna cut these. Make sure. There you go. Oops. All right, let me do the next. Are you guys coming over here?
Yes.
Wait, Hannah, can I add?
Nothing. I actually can't do it.
Don't love that I just walked in front of the camera. I'm like.
I hope maybe they. I want it. Yeah.
How are you? Yeah.
How do I backpack and everything? What do you?
I love between the two.
Okay.
And then because I forget at the same as it was.
Yeah. The only thing is if I take a kid and scheduling the eval, then I'm starting really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The eval, but other than that,
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a thing.
I don't like.
So I'm not seeing, right? Very important. And then.
I have to bring your chair, Molly.
What?
Stop. I don't remember. We just say, I think they're gonna be Tina. Oh, all right, mom, really, so she has the wet mom. That's just like, she's gonna go.
Okay, does every group have a piece of slug tape? A cord? And a piece of cardboard. And some of you have scissors, some of you don't, some of you will have to borrow. So the first thing that you're gonna do is you're going to, did you already cut them?
They're already stripped. Yeah, I've already, okay, so see how Katie, I went ahead and cut them.
It looks like a
Cause
wishbone.
I only had 5 sets.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So-
some of you have the pointy end and the non-pointy end, otherwise known as the male and female end. And some of you only have the pretty end.
Charlie.
That's right.
So cut off, if you have the pointy end, cut that off. That can go in the trash. We don't need that. Okay,
Some people, half of you should have a pointy end, so just cut it off right next to the pointy end. Huh? We're good. We don't have a pointy end.
okay. Then you're gonna take the single one that you have
I mean, like, generally.
and you're going to strip the black wire. So to do that, you're gonna barely cut through a little bit at a time. So you're gonna kind of, I don't know if you guys know how to strip a wire, but you'll cut through a little bit so then you can pop off the black part
Wire
Just-
scissors would be helpful.
for about
But-
this much. But you're using scissors because we don't.
Yeah, does everyone understand what you're gonna
I can
do?
look around.
You're just cutting, so you're gonna cut down about
Trying to make
3/4
it
of an inch just through the plastic until you can pull the plastic off the wire. I'll show you. I think I have another pen. You wanna strip it down so it looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay?
You're gonna put it down, like. Yeah. Something good down. I think that, but we got what? Or that.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You're gonna read. You did really good at them. You go, yeah. I watched it and I will watch me trying it like it's a big, like I don't. I've been knowing what giving us. They are so. Gene, yes. At fall, they have like a pumpkin with berries, so like.
Like grams.
Like big and all of them, yeah.
That's very good. Sure, you're able to say.
The pumpkin was standing really sick, they're unexpected. So I would do it. It's like you have chicken sausage. So, yeah. Oh, no. I never can. Yeah. We have to do it. Yeah. Tried the sausages. It's like the best chicken. She gave him very good. And he got me. I was so bad. And try. I said, I'll be dead. I did. Should stop. It seemed that. And I mean, was pretty repressed. It's like such a good machine and too for like takes some time. Super early. I feel like I've done with like a vodka sauce before. Has everyone got it shred? All of those, like cheese too. Yeah. Oh, I think like that.
Okay, the next thing you're gonna have to do is strip the inner wires. Should be 3 inner wires, red, yellow, white, goshi.
Okay. That one's good.
Okay, so this one's a little harder, it's a little smaller. Well, part of it.
For pumpkin.
Here's your neck.
I'll get to make sure that I also need to.
I know she could only
Katie, which,
much.
Katie,
Which ends should we decide?
I don't know. I've got one.
Okay. Okay, you guys got that straight? If you look at the video, okay, if you look at the PowerPoint, the next thing, this one is gonna say that you're gonna cut off one of the wires. Okay, we are not gonna cut a wire right now, okay? Thing that we found is that depending on where we get the audio jacks, sometimes we need to combine red and yellow, sometimes we combine red and white, sometimes we combine yellow and red. So it is kind of trial and error to see which way works, so that's why we're not gonna cut anything off right now.
This one,
Except for the tip, the plastic. Everyone got the plastic off?
they're stripping their 3 little ones now.
Okay.
Sorry. Let me see.
Which way are we gonna go? Which one?
Okay,
What are we gonna combine?
who's still cutting their 3 little ones? Okay, we'll give you a couple more minutes. If you've already cut it, you can start prepping your cardboard and your slug tape. So cut down your cardboard.
Here, I have a video. Look at the size that you want on your cardboard.
It's like a little square.
Yeah, think about your AA battery and it needs to slide in. That's the size we're kind of shooting for. I gave you a whole big piece. So. See how small? One little piece of cardboard.
Here's how, this is about how big my cardboard is. You can do it a little bit bigger. It's like a little rectangle-ish thing. We can cut down some of it too. Yeah, shorts.
Where you thought it make that over. You got. Oh. Sure. I know it was a word. Are you gonna make it? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I do too. That's there's
Yeah.
like they're pushing for and try that. So yeah, and that's after that. You get it done in a.
Yeah.
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 And you're gonna have some panic, even though it doesn't matter, we're like, this is one of the.
I'm not getting it scheduled the 45 days.
Yeah, because I always like.
Within. Yeah. Or not, like I said, no time. Yeah, right. I'm able to be more decisive.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I feel like someone's frustrating and on itself to do it. I feel like I need to think about that.
And.
We know, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say we're gonna be red, white. Red, white. I don't know, that's what mine has.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So every, even if you buy this in the same kit,
Yeah.
sometimes companies put different
Yeah.
colors. There's no pattern. There's no percentage. So, pick 2 that you wanna do, just you guys can pick, and what you're
Just remember which ones you pick, because if it doesn't work, then we have to pick 2 more.
and you can take, what you can do is you can pick 2, and, okay, let's start with, yellow and red. Grab yellow and red, and twist the 2 copper pieces together from your yellow and red. So now you have 2. Yeah. Right. 2 wires, right? You have yellow and red.
It's just again, see, mine have red and white, hers has red and yellow. I'm wondering, color of the end.
What is
I don't know.
Here, this is red.
Mine's red and
Ours
yellow.
is red and we're doing the red and
The
yellow.
red and white.
I was using that to check.
Could it be?
Okay. Piece in between them. I do one side at a time. It makes it a little bit easier. You'll put your cardboard piece in, and it's like the sandwich. So your wires are on, I don't know, I'm trying to do this, Kennedy. The wires go on the outside of the cardboard piece. The cardboard is the meat inside the sandwich. And you're gonna take your slug tape, it will peel off. You can cut the slug tape down and it peels off, there's a backing on it, and it peels off and it'll stick.
Why? Wait.
He must have been, sorry.
It's like. On the video, the red giant.
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay. I have it. Yeah. It's just. Give it a whirl. So then do we just tape it around?
And you don't want your slug tape on each side to touch because that's gonna make a connection. So you want your slug tape small enough that it doesn't overlap the other side's slug tape.
So we're doing slug tape on edge.
I grabbed the wires.
Okay, so we need to cut it.
I thought you wrapped.
Oh, sorry.
Like.
You can cut that down. A little, like a little. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah, and then with the piece on this side, over the wire.
Okay.
Oh, you did. And then
Has this changed a little bit since the. Like some of your shirt?
Yeah, doing this.
Yeah.
The only thing we did 2 years ago was we did the adapting the plush toy. We didn't make this.
Oh, I was like, it's similar, but it seemed different.
Yes,
Okay.
use the same cord.
Okay.
So you can use the same
Okay,
cord.
which ones, is it the ice cream?
Yeah.
These are,
This one,
this one aren't too.
or this one. That one, but. That one is short.
Oh, we need to do that. Okay, so what you're gonna do is divide it in, right?
Hey, you wanna try yours?
Yeah.
Okay. Coins like this that have like an on off that makes it duck, so let's call that. Like those ones you have to have on to be able to use it, so. This is for beyond, and you put it on the positive end.
Yeah.
By 30.
Okay.
You can do it again. So we need to stop, so that interrupted what was going on, and now our switch should.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
But we use fire.
Oh, man.
So excited. We did it.
What was happening?
Oh. Where that comes from?
Oh,
Here's the shirt. Oh, here's the other.
Oh.
You guys have got select date, neck date. That's not gonna, you have to have it. Blood cardboard has blood, like, yeah, we're. This blood page, not touch. Yeah, see.
So you have the work.
Yeah.
Okay, so now for the.
But he not.
Right.
Okay.
I'm gonna call you, that's gonna drop my sharing.
All right, fire the fire.
Yeah, we had them do it KOTA. Because it was a lot of chaos.
They have no idea what's about to happen. So I'm about to rock their world. I'm gonna walk into that house and people are about to touch shit out of this stuff.
About that. Does anyone else have theirs that one in file?
What color?
Those are like red and white and yellow.
Right. Good.
Right.
I've been open. Right.
Right, but it's especially. And I'll have that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you should have been like, you too.
Yeah.
Well, she needs one. Playground.
That's what I
We're like, why did I get some more this one?
Sorry.
Oh, you're
I just still done. I just thought, leash.
Once you get that, it's just something like clear. I think find her. I like checking.
Maybe the was profit. Was actually last week and everything. Sorry, international.
What's the complete? I'm used to right now.
Yeah, we'll have to pack. This is going to start to. Are anyone else ready or set?
So before you try testing, make sure that your slug face isn't wrapped around and it's not touching your nose. Leave it there.
And how big, did they say it? Enough to cover the wire? Tiny?
For what I have to.
Oh, we got a lot.
There's a vacuum.
Oh my gosh, you're good.
I probably not. No, like.
Thoughts are better.
I get super frustrated when I'm just sleeping.
Yeah, I was like, struck.
I'm only getting that.
I didn't even know those shapes were. I just saw therapy.
Did she say it, did she say it has a inner?
We can try that one.
Is that
It's what I just wrapped it. But we need special.
Yeah, the season. The seasons.
I don't know where we're getting. I do.
Oh, yes, okay.
So I started to scrub on my slip on and then started to rub on it and that. It's not the tag.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I know. Good plan. How it's our team guys. Like. And then I'm sad. It's not really know. So there's no team. Yeah, it's does it feel like the
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel like since I started. Yeah. Like, she was like. Oh, no, I'll do, I mean. And I know she'll go. My God. Yeah. Normally.
Oh, yellow should be on its own. She just told another.
That's what we did. Yeah.
That's what I read.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we just have to do this. It's I know, this. 1:30. Dying. I divide it over. I see it's over that. But I don't know. It is.
You know, and I'm thinking about, I didn't plan for this. I,
That's right.
night.
You're going to that.
Oh, that better, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sore almost quicker than it, like up here is where I'm really sore. I look up the screen, like it's like I'm sore. Then went down the stairs, I'm okay.
We took the bar.
We did a
Bar.
And we've taken her coffee.
but she was like, getting her clothes from doing that. I'm laid out.
Hey, guys, did you try yours? We have it. We have tried it. Wait. Yours, yeah, like you did yellow and all, right? Okay, plug that in. And also would.
I mean, I did.
Oh, you're going to 7
Just sitting on the mat, like I
So
don't know.
when I turn the toy on, it doesn't turn off. Inside.
My daughter reaches the phone. It sounds like no, I'm just wild.
Yeah, it works. Oh, you, that,
Well, so there you go. People like that's the toy out, then leave. And you know, the kid likes it. My partner is like, it's just leave it stop. So like that's the bubble blower. And this is the bubble blower I saw. So this one's perfect. In here.
Oh.
And then, so this, the baby, okay, free is adapted.
And I wasn't sure exactly what we were doing today. So we switched it out.
This and I switched. Yeah, but I mean, they had little daughter. Well, we can fun. That was a good one. They're probably. Let me go through here real quick. That was pretty much the end of it. There's just a couple more slides on accessing resources. Oh, no, you're fine. So there's info on, different places to get resources from. This is for more like rural areas who are like, we don't have any access to like adapted toys. Thank goodness we have FITS that can help us purchase some things, but there's also like libraries, makerspace, high school, options, scout programs, community businesses sometimes, like seats, what is it, Geeks one? I can't remember. They offered to like help Carrie and I with a couple toys that we were like, why won't these work? Secondhand online, you can find Variety KC for us, Variety in the United States for other areas. Vision and hearing resources, talk to your people. And then these are assistive technology for Kansas. We won't go through that. Is there one more slide? And then questions.
What's that? Sorry.
I said questions.
Oh.
Do you know, we're kind of talking like, if we have access to a lot of these adapting things in the office, like they're really accessible, like just even some of the, like, Cinderella and Stink, like the materials that were all in one place.
So we thought about that with the book stuff, but then we were like, there's so much stuff and it has to be so individualized that that would be really hard to do. It'd be like a craft closet by that point. So we were like, more so like helping like the family access it or something like that. As far as we have everything for adapting plush toys, we have everything for adapting, making battery interrupters. Everything you would need if you would solder, except for the solder gun, and that's at the library, or like I have one if you wanted to borrow one. But as far as like the books and stuff, it just became a little too overwhelming of being like, how much stuff do we really want to keep?
But I think we probably could get a few things. I mean, I know we have the Dyson and.
We do, yeah, we have Dyson, or like those, you know, the glue dot things or whatever.
Those are like common tools that have been helpful with this
Right.
phase of
adapting.
Yeah, glue gun, I would say glue gun would be really nice to have because then if family had craft stuff, you could bring your glue gun and you guys could glue it together or the Gorilla Glue. But
A little factor.
yeah, the suction cups,
So they really.
yeah.
Like that might be, you don't have the section, so you fill it a fits form.
Yeah, you could fill it with this stuff. Whenever we run low, I always email Stacy and I'm like, she already knows it by now. And so I'm like, hey, we're short on the audio jacks or the whatever. So I'm sure if you did a fits form
But
for
for new
for
stuff,
that.
that way she has it, and she has to go and each time find the link and she will fill out the fits form and,
Check it.
you know, if you're emailing her, she's still filling it.
I don't know. To try that for you after.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, and if you guys want to look up here, this is like one that I got this on sale, like at Michael's and soldered this one. I mean, so you can solder anything. So, but this one actually was interesting and I don't know why. You could still use the regular button and a switch. So that blew my mind. I don't know why. Somebody smarter than me needs to figure that out. But it's a bubble blower. So like any of these can be soldered. We did find though, like the bubble machines. I mean, bubbles leak all over with a cardboard, like it's not gonna work a long time with a battery interrupter. Like it really truly would need to be like soldered if the kid like wants to play with it consistently.
I tried a piece of plastic, like a firm piece of plastic like a lid, and that did not work. So trying to beat a bubble issue.
Did anybody else need to test their toy before they go?
If you have scissors or extra stuff that you don't want, if you'll bring them up. Because we are presenting Thursday. Stop.
So